Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 16 tight end starter sets for the 2019 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about all things at the tight end position, going over the matchups going into Week 16, and then my top 12 tight end rankings on the week. Before we begin today's video, let me remind all of you, if you have not yet already, click that subscribe button, join the community. Also, don't forget to click the bell notification button to stay up to date on my latest content, and click that like button if you like today's video. Thank you very much. Hey guys, how's it going? All right, so to start it off, I mentioned this in my wide receivers video, so if you haven't checked that out, I just want to kind of reiterate. There are no Thursday night games this week. The first games are on Saturday. There are 3 games there, and then the rest of the games on Sunday, and then we have the Monday night game between the Packers and the Minnesota Vikings. So I will be doing live streams 8 a.m. both on Saturday morning and Sunday morning. That is why I've compacted and pretty much released all of these videos within or by Wednesday so that we can all get prepared. I'll have my updated rankings on Saturday morning, Sunday morning, so we'll talk about those respective players and all that kind of jazz. So just be aware of that. And if you want to come hang out, talk fantasy football and get some answers, I'll be there on this channel. That's why the notification bell button is there, and you can go ahead and click on that. Either way, let's see. Do we want to talk about matchup? Yeah, let's talk about matchups first, because news I went over in the other video. You could probably go listen there. As of right now, not too much going around in terms of news. The number one thing that I will reiterate is that you need to go right now and pick up DeAndre Washington of the Oakland Raiders. Josh Jacobs is out. And he's going to be held out this week against the Chargers. DeAndre Washington, another good play. We'll update his rankings as the week progresses. But let's go ahead and let's talk about matchups at the tight end position going into Week 16. As we all know, the Arizona Cardinals giving up the most points to opposing tight ends. Jacob Hollister has a very good opportunity this week to finally have himself a very good game in a pretty long time here. So Jacob Hollister is a guy that if he is available in your league, we mentioned it on Monday's waiver wire episode, that you can go potentially pick him up, add him to your roster, and have yourself a pretty good tight end that, in my opinion, could be of service this week. So the Arizona Cardinals giving up a lot of points. Now, on the other side of that, the Seattle Seahawks, they give up a lot of points. But again, nobody's picking up and playing Charles Clay. No one's doing that. And I would not suggest you do that. So therefore, that is a matchup that no one will be able to take advantage of. Unfortunate, but that is the case. Moving on, the Oakland Raiders giving up some points to the opposing tight end position. Hunter Henry will have a good opportunity. The last time he played against the Oakland Raiders, he did score a touchdown in the red zone. But again, as of late, has not seen a great amount of targets, and it has been a little disappointing and concerning, in my opinion, considering where this offense is kind of at. With Keenan Allen, Mike Williams getting a little bit of a boost in the last couple of weeks in terms of especially red zone opportunity. And then also Eckler's contributions in the passing game. Melvin Gordon, they're probably going to dominate on the ground this week. So we'll see where that goes. But again, that's another great matchup for Hunter Henry. Moving on, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Darren Fells could be of service. We're not going to talk about him today in specific. But again, this is a guy that, in my opinion, is a top perhaps 15 tight end on the week. Playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another team that gives up a lot of points to opposing tight ends. Darren Fells and Akins, not bad plays there if you're really desperate and thin at the position. Moving on, the Washington Redskins. Unfortunately, Evan Ingram has been sent to the injured reserve. So unless you're trying to roll the dice on somebody else this week, I mean, we'll see where that goes. Moving on, we have the Kansas City Chiefs giving up a bunch of points against the, they play against the Bears. There's no Bears tight end. Adam Shaheen's not playing. There's no, Trey Burton. There's no Zach Miller from years ago. It just doesn't exist right now. Hopefully they'll draft one, but we'll see. Moving on, we have ourselves the Cowboys, who have given up a lot of points to opposing tight ends. Just this past week, Tyler Higbee had a monster game. I think Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedart, both the combinations, because of the lack of depth at the wide receiver position for this Philadelphia Eagles offense, they will be asked more than ever to contribute heavily like they have in the last couple of weeks, so they should be great as a duo. On the other side, we have Houston Texans giving up a lot of points to opposing tight ends. Maybe O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate. The issue between both of them is I don't know who's going to have the pop-off game. When we go and we look at snap counts for these players, it's kind of hard to determine who I certainly want to leave out there in my lineup, because, again, there's a 50-50 chance that the other guy steals, the reception or something of that sort. Okay, so just listen to it this way, okay? O.J. Howard has been playing nearly 80% of the snaps on average plus for the last 3 weeks, okay? That being said, while Cameron Brate has played about, if I'm not mistaken, 40%-ish in the last couple of weeks. O.J. Howard's targets to receptions, he's been catching the ball maybe 4 or 5 times a game. And so has Cameron Brate. So whenever he comes in, he's still catching the ball 3 to 4 times a game. similar to a guy like O.J. Howard, despite O.J. Howard being on the field longer. That's mainly because he blocks. He's a blocking tight end. We'll get opportunities there. Anyway, so that's a little bit sketchy. The Green Bay Packers giving up a lot of points. Kyle Rudolph, not a bad play again. The Tennessee Titans giving up a lot of points. Jared Cook, that's fantastic. The Atlanta Falcons, again, there is no Jaguars tight ends at this moment in time. And then we have the Indianapolis Colts giving up some points. The question is whether Ian Thomas is going to show up or disappear once again. But either way, let's go ahead and let's talk about this week's top 12 tight end rankings for week 16 of the fantasy football season. Starting off with my number one, we have George Kittle. George Kittle is incredible. I mean, in terms of his consistent production, he was the only wide receiver that truly did anything. Or yeah, he really is a wide receiver. The wide receiver for or offensive piece for the 49ers to do anything this past week. There was a moment in that game where he was targeted 10 times in a row by Jimmy Garoppolo. That is insane. That's how you know he is 100% the entire offense here. 17 targets, 13 receptions for a $134. George Kittle is amazing. In the last 3 weeks, has had 2 performances of over 100 receiving yards, scored 2 touchdowns. I mean, he is consistent as ever. Has a pretty good matchup, in my opinion, against the Los Angeles Rams last time he played. I mean, every time he plays against them, he has a pop-off game. That is for certain. If you go back and you've looked from last season to this season, every time he plays against the Los Angeles Rams, he's going for over 100. He's getting a bunch of catches. George Kittle is going to be a monster this week. He's my number one for sure. Moving on to number 2, Travis Kelce, a guy that really had maybe one of the best performances I've ever seen in a weather game that was so ridiculous with snow and it was so difficult to see. Travis Kelce on 13 targets caught the ball 11 times for 142 yards. Hit an even better game than George Kittle did last week. Imagine that. I mean, in terms of the receptions aren't there because the targets aren't there, but in terms of yardage, in terms of dominating the defense, playing against a fairly good team. Denver's defense is not a joke, and still was able to dominate them. Travis Kelce broke a couple records this past weekend, being the first tight end in his first 4 seasons of his career to have over 1,000 yards, back to back. I know his rookie season he had his season-ending injury and all that jazz, but he's been ridiculous as of late, and he's not really slowing down in the last 5 weeks. 17, 18.7, 11.5, 14.5, 19.7. Those are his statistical outputs in terms of half-point PPR scoring formats. I mean, it just looks fantastic. Travis Kelce, certainly another one of these top tight ends. He's my number 2 on the week against the Chicago Bears in Chicago. Moving on to number 3, Zach Ertz. Like I mentioned, Zach Ertz is going to have himself a very good week here. Has continuously in the last 5-6 weeks been depended upon more than ever. 11, 14, 11, 6, 13, and 10. Those are his target counts in the last 6 performances. Has, consistently either had a touchdown and or gotten a pretty high yard count. He's gotten over 90 receiving yards for the last 6 games. He has scored, in fact, 5 receiving touchdowns in the last 6 games, and he's been ridiculously good. The only game that he was ever slow in was Miami. And that was mainly because he was dealing with an injury. So really, to be honest, against Dallas this week, fantastic matchup for the division. This is going to be an exciting one on hand, and I really do think Zach Ertz is going to step up to it. He's my number 3. Moving on to number 4, Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews, despite himself dealing with an injury, last week had a fantastic game for the Baltimore Ravens. Had himself another touchdown, 50 receiving yards on 4 catches. I think this week against the Cleveland Browns should be a great contributor for this offense. I think Mark Andrews, more than just about anybody in this offense, is always going to be the touchdown-dependent red zone threat, always, because when they get down to the red zone, there are multiple options. You have the height and the size of a Mark Andrews, or we're going to either pound it up the middle, or QB option, I'm keeping the ball. Lamar Jackson runs it in. But majority of the times, 8 times this season, we've seen Mark Andrews score a touchdown. And I think this week we could eventually see another one of these big performances here. Again, he's definitely healthier than he was last week, dealing with that ankle injury, knee injury. I think it was a knee injury. So hopefully this week he's there, he's popping off and having a good game. I expect him to be pretty good in the matchup. Moving on to number 5, we have Tyler Higbee. Now you're wondering why I don't have Tyler Higbee above Mark Andrews. Tyler Higbee scares me. He's been an absolute monster. In fact, he's already walked himself into the top 12 tight end conversation with these 3 performances of over 100 receiving yards in each of the last 3 games. I mean, the target counts, 8, 11, and 14. He is taking targets away from Cooper Kupp and Todd Gurley and Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks. He is the number 1 receiving option on this Los Angeles Rams offense, plain and simple. as it currently stands, the San Francisco 49ers, they are no joke, but at times have struggled, especially recently, against the tight end position. If you go and you look and you think to yourself, well, technically, Andrew, supposedly, they give up the second fewest most points to opposing tight ends thus far this season. But when we look at it, in the last couple weeks, they have been giving up touchdowns to opposing tight ends. Josh Hill in week 14 had a touchdown. Jared Cook also had 2 touchdowns. So that's 3 touchdowns in one game just to the tight end position. Then we had Mark Andrews the week before, went for 50-1 in a weather game. Hollister went for 862-1. They have given up, 6 touchdowns to opposing tight ends since week 10. It's week 16 now. So there's a little bit of comfort there, in my opinion, that could potentially be of service. We could potentially play Tyler Higbee. He is seeing a bunch of targets. He is dominating, and he could have a good game. That's why I leave him at number 5. I want to play the hot hand, but again, I want to be careful with it. I prefer the top 4 guys over him. Moving on. That's how rankings work, right? Moving on. We have ourselves number 6, Darren Waller. Speaking of, having a hot hand. As of the last 3 weeks, Darren Waller has really, truly kind of gotten back to where he was earlier this season. After he got he got paid, he was a little slow coming out the gates there. But in the last 3 weeks, he's had 2 100-plus yard performances, 3 performances of over 7 receiving yards. His target counts 9, 6, and 10. Reception counts 7, 6, and 8. Plays against the Los Angeles Chargers, who, in my opinion, yes, at times they can be a difficult matchup, but truly he is the number 1 wide receiver for this offense. Without Josh Jacobs there, they're going to be tested probably a little bit more than they typically want to be. And I think, to be honest, Darren Waller could have himself another good week here. Last time they did play against the Los Angeles Chargers, there wasn't much of a performance from Darren Waller, and also Moreau kind of stole the touchdown down in the red zone. Or I think it was a fullback that stole a touchdown. But regardless, hopefully Darren Waller could find himself in the end zone this week. Doesn't do it often, but maybe this is the week. Moving on, we have Austin Hooper as my number 7. The way that I saw Darren Waller dominate that defense of the Jacksonville Jaguars last week, I'm kind of getting an idea that Austin Hooper could have a big week here. Austin Hooper's been quiet since he returned, but he is very capable of having himself another one of these big weeks. Unfortunately, that touchdown that he caught late in the game, that in my opinion, from my angle, he rubbed it off his foot and it did not hit the ground. Unfortunately, they called it back. Julio still got the job done. We could see Austin Hooper with a big week here, in my opinion, against Jacksonville at home in week 16. Again, this is a guy that is a very volatile player considering he hasn't done much in the last couple of weeks, but I am very confident that there is a possibility that we could find a touchdown for Austin Hooper in the red zone. He sees the targets. He sees majority of the opportunity. He's just got to act upon it now, and I think the matchup is favorable enough to help him out. Moving on, we have number 8. We have Jared Cook. Okay, so Jared Cook, again, another one of these tight ends that as of late has been extremely consistent, and I love it. And I love Jared Cook for being this consistent. Where the heck is Jared Cook on my list? There he is. I love his consistency. And yes, this last week wasn't incredible, but he got the job done in what he needed to do. 4 receptions, 54 yards. That's great. I'm fairly certain if it was more of a competitive game between them and the Indianapolis Colts, we would have seen more Jared Cook. But that wasn't the case. But either way, he has been a fantastic performer since week 5. Sure, he missed a couple games due to injury, but outside of that, the dude is putting up 10-plus points. He's been consistent. Plays against Tennessee, who is a very favorable matchup for the tight end position. Earlier this season, Tennessee was giving up a lot of touchdowns to opposing tight ends. In fact, this season already, they've given up 2, 4, 6, 9 touchdowns to opposing tight ends. Some in the last couple weeks, in fact. So as of right now, I'm pretty confident in the fact that we could see ourselves with a pretty good week from a guy like Jared Cook. Moving on. Number 9 is Hunter Henry. Now, I know Hunter Henry probably has one of the better matchups amongst all the tight ends right now, but what I've seen from Hunter Henry in the last couple of weeks have been a little bit concerning in my eyes, okay? So give me a second here. All right, so as I was saying, in terms of his target counts, this is what scares me, right? Since his return, when he returned from his injury, he had 9, 8, 6, 10, 7, 9. That's fantastic. But in the last 3 weeks, 3, 4, and 2. Those have been his target counts. Sure, he scored a touchdown against Jacksonville, but are we really trying to 100%, invest in a Hunter Henry this week with the inconsistencies in the target work? Sure, it's a great matchup, but am I really willing to do it? No, I'm not really. I'm kind of concerned about it, to be honest. In terms of snap counts, has decreased in the last couple of weeks, went from being a 87% snap count player earlier on this season to being in the game 60 to 69% of the time as of late. That's concerning. We're seeing less usage of him. We're seeing more usage of a guy like Virgil Green, who is being used to block rather than Hunter Henry. It's unfortunate, but again, he's a good play this week in terms of the matchup. We just got to see more targets in his direction if we want to 100% believe in his potential this week. Moving on to Kyle Rudolph, another one of these great opportunities real quick. The Green Bay Packers giving up a lot of points to opposing tight ends. In the last couple of weeks, we had Caden Smith for the New York Giants go for 6 for 70. George Kittle 6 for 129. Greg Olsen 8 for 98. Hunter Henry 7 for 84. Darren Waller 7 for 126. Travis Kelce 4 for 63 and a touchdown. Foster Moreau went for 24 and 1. I mean, everyone has dominated this defense. Now, you may be thinking, Andrew, as of late, has anybody doing anything? No, because they played the Washington Redskins and the Chicago Bears, and they don't have tight ends. So where does that leave me? That leaves me with a very good opportunity of Kyle Rudolph potentially having a good game here. Whether it's him and Irv Smith, that's why I have Kyle Rudolph a little bit lower, because Irv Smith is always going to be there and always has the opportunity to steal potential points like he did this last week in the red zone. So Kyle Rudolph sits at 10. Moving on. Jacob Hollister is my number 11. Again, the Arizona Cardinals, they just will give tight ends touchdowns every single week. They've given up, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. They've given up 15 touchdowns to opposing tight ends this season. That is insane. That is an incredible number, and I'm 100%. If I'm in doubt with who I want to play, if I have a Hunter Henry and I'm really worried about it, or if I have somebody even lower, not even on today's list, and I'm worrying about it, and Jacob Hollister is available, I want to invest in that, and I want to go for it. And I think Jacob Hollister could be a really good pick as my number 11 tight end. Could be a higher upside, potential top 5 play this week. But as of right now, I'm pretty safe here at number 11 with him. Moving on to the last tight end I wanted to mention, it is Dallas Goedart. Dallas Goedart has been one of the best tight ends in the National Football League right now. He's been consistent in the fact that he's going to get targets, he's going to get receptions. In the last 5 weeks, 6'8", 7, 6'6". Those have been his target counts. He's obviously gotten a lot of work. Sure, fumbles here and there, but to be honest, overall, the way that I expect him to be used against the Dallas Cowboys should be at a pretty substantial amount. The last time he played against Dallas this season, 4 for 69 and a touchdown. He is a consistent tight end. They're going to use him as a wide receiver, him and Ertz, probably both on the field similarly at the same time. And they're going to try to work down the field with both of them in the lineup. When we've looked at their snap counts in the last couple of weeks, we've had, especially this past week, Zach Ertz played 88% of offensive snaps, while Dallas Goedart played 84% of snaps. They are using 2 tight end sets majority of the time. That's why it helps them run the ball more because these guys can definitely block. And on top of it, opens up play action for these guys. And that's why he sits on my number 12. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Those are my top 12 tight end rankings for Week 16 of the fantasy football season. Again, don't forget, Saturday morning, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Sunday morning, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll be doing live streams for Championship Sunday. Come join us, talk, donate, whatever ends up happening, answer questions, get some extra, updated rankings. We'll see you then. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Don't forget to click the subscribe button, click the like button if you like today's video. And until next time, which will probably be Saturday, I'll see you guys then. Enjoy your Wednesday, and don't stress out too much about fantasy. I'll see you guys. Peace.